Welcome to this week's edition of the Epler Wood International Vlog. I just returned from Stockholm, Sweden, where I had the opportunity to speak for all of the directors of museums throughout Sweden. It was a vital discussion of how to manage tourism in their most important cultural monuments. While I was there, I spoke with another sustainable tourism expert, Doug Lansky, who's been talking about many of the same things that Epler Wood International has been discussing in the international media, and that is, how do we manage our major monuments for tourism in the future? As we all know, over-tourism has been stressing, particularly cultural monuments like the Louvre and the Uffizi, and historic monuments like Angkor Wat for some time, and they are struggling with managing the crowds. Doug and I discussed what will have to happen in future in order to manage these crowds and where the focus needs to go. One of the primary points of discussion is whether destination marketing organizations can do the job, or if they will need to separate themselves and create new organizations that are dedicated to managing the environmental and social capital of these countries, using some of the revenue from destination marketing in future. In addition, we talked about the whole question of diversification of tourism and asking tourists to visit more new and different destinations throughout the country. We both agreed that it's unlikely that tourists, especially on the first visit, will want to go to different destinations than the primary linchpin attractions that have so often brought most tourists to countries throughout the world. So let's hear what Doug Lansky has to say about solving some of these tricky problems. Welcome to the Epler Wood International Vlog. This week we have Doug Lansky, who is a travel journalist who has moved into advising destinations around the world. Doug, welcome.
Hey, Megan, welcome to Stockholm.
Thank you. Yes, we're here together in Stockholm, which is exciting to discuss questions of how destinations really can manage themselves in the future. So Doug, give us a little background. How have destination marketing organizations operated in the past, and how do you think they'll have to change in order to manage tourism and over-tourism in future?
Okay, big question. So these destination marketing organizations, they came along after the tourists were already there. So they were sort of like, got out in front of this parade of tourists and pretend they were taking the lead. And in actuality, what they were doing more of was sort of like adding lighter fluid to it. They said, okay, we got tourists already, let's just get some more. And that's what they did by adding ad campaigns and marketing and so forth. And there was really no one to tell them when to stop. And so they've been bidding, and now we're hitting this critical mass of tourists where people are looking around going, I think we got enough. And then some places don't quite. And so how do we manage all this? This has become the big question. This is the Wild West of what we're dealing with today in tourism.
So what do you think they do need to prepare, and what's the structure going to look like in the future?
What I think has to happen, and what they've been doing is taking these marketing organizations and saying to them, hey, we have too many tourists here and there. I think you need to start managing them better. But the thing is, they're still getting bonuses to bring in more. People are still applauding them at their conferences for bringing in more. How can they also be bringing in less? So what we really need to do is take a step back. I think we need a separate but equal organization, as they do in Barcelona, in a different office or different building with a firewall in between. So we have these checks and balances, someone who's pushing back and saying, no, we have enough now, and people who've got a skill set of how to manage tourism.
What about these major attractions, these linchpin attractions that are really causing the most problems in places like Venice and Barcelona? What do you think is going to happen in future? How will the destination management organizations of the future begin to put them in a more orderly fashion as part of the visit to each destination?
Right. Well, I think there's got to be a core understanding no matter where these places are. And there are different solutions for different places, no mistake about that. But I mean, for people who are coming, especially first-time visitors who aren't there for a wedding or aren't there for a business meeting, they are going to see those attractions. They feel it's their right. They're going to make a beeline there. And what they need to these destinations need to understand that managing those key crown jewel attractions is really the trick to the whole thing. And how they manage that is going to be, these are the destination drivers. These are what make people want to go. So we need to make sure that any plan puts these things at front and center.
So how do you see the destination management organizations of the future getting ahead of the curve? Like smart cities, we're here in Stockholm. Will this be their responsibility to take care of this? How will they work with the attraction to make sure that they can have an orderly system?
Right. I think it's going to have to be like a joint partnership. So for the attraction side of things, the first thing is to have a time ticketed entry. So the guests book at a specific time. And that gives the destination, or sorry, the attractions an idea of how many people, if they're maximized, they can put through their attraction in a good way over a given day. So they get their own little mini carrying capacity. And then the destination can take charge of adding all these things up and making some of that ticketing transparent, so that when people, if you back it up to when people are booking their trip and they're booking their flight, looking at their hotel, they can actually then see when there's these top attractions are fully booked. And if they want to really go to those things, it means they're going to have to change the dates of their trip to make sure they can see those things, to make sure they can get in. Now, who's creating that digital platform? This is the big question. If left to their own devices, this could be the booking.coms, it could be Google Travel, it could be Get Your Guide and players like that. But I think it's actually important. This is really a utility. And I'd like to see the city keep control of that utility and make the decisions and be the ones who are determining their own future.
Will the cities and attractions benefit more financially if they're in charge?
I think that the biggest thing for the city to keep control of their platform, they're the ones who are going to benefit from a local economic input. They can help these individual attractions work together. They're in the best place to do it. And by working together, if there's too many tourists here, they can send them over there. With the technology, if an app that says, hey, this place is fully booked, 50 yards away, there's an attraction that's got space, and they start working with each other, they're going to find that, and combine that with VIP type places and special offers for students and seniors and so forth. They can have a organic, sort of a holistic strategy for the whole city that's going to lift all boats in a much more profound way.
Mm-hmm. How should the attractions look at this? Should they be moving more quickly, perhaps, to coordinate with their cities in order to have destination management higher on the agenda to protect their valuable attractions in the city?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's no question that that needs to happen for these places to at least continue some sustainable growth into the future. And they're going to benefit more, and they're going to also realize they can attract more people, they can spread more people out, they can get more money per visitor if that's something that they have as a goal. And it's up to the cities, I think, to sort of figure out their own destiny, what they want out of tourism. And they need the tools and they need the teamwork to make that happen.
So Doug, how would you wrap up all of this information for the destination? How are they going to protect these valuable assets in future, and what will it mean?
Okay, I think there's two biggest steps. One is we need a separate management organization that's different from the marketing side. The second is having this transparency for supply and demand, so that when people are booking their trip, they can see if there's even availability to get into those things they most want to see. And so it's doing the visitor service, and it's actually helped spreading them out throughout the season, throughout the year, as a consequence of that. So those are the two biggest things. And then how they actually work together and provide that framework is a technology I'd love to see stay within the hands of the destination so that they control their own destiny.
Great. Thank you, Doug. It's great to have you with me here in Stockholm together, your home city, and talk about these issues that we've been talking about separately around the world. So great to have you. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks. It's a pleasure.
That was a good discussion with Doug Lansky while I was in Stockholm. It really allowed us to explore, I think, some very, very important questions. How will destination marketing organizations really transition to becoming destination management organization? Is that even possible? What kinds of skills will be required in future in order for DMOs to truly manage the most important environmental and social capital in every country on Earth? These are big stakes. Larger questions need to be raised about what are the skills that are in place to do this. I had the opportunity to visit with Visit Stockholm while I was in Sweden, and they were very honest with me about the fact that they probably need more expertise in order to take on that type of important role in Sweden. So let's think about this. There's many different ways that we can manage our societies in future, and changing the governance around tourism is likely to be an important goal, so that smart cities, even in Scandinavia, have the opportunity to take advantage of existing skills and move them towards the management of tourism. In addition, the idea that we can actually create diversification around primary attractions is somewhat flawed. And this discussion today just opens up a better route, a better form of discussion on this matter. We won't be able to diversify first-time travelers away from the most important attractions when they go to these destinations. What will need to happen is that we'll have to have advanced ticketing systems that are fully transparent and that can be seen well in advance, years in advance of trips even, to allow travelers to book their attractions at the same time that they're booking their flights. If those things were to happen, it will change the landscape of how tourism transpires in so many of these overcrowded sites. So thanks a lot for joining us for this week's edition of the Epler Wood International Vlog.